and welcome to Your Life, Your Way. I'm Jason Davis, and my co-host is with me, Miss Tina Shang. Good morning, Tina.
Good morning, Jason.
All right, fantastic weekend behind us, and looking forward to a big event next weekend. Can you think of what that might be?
I have no idea.
We're going to spring forward, people. It's almost that time. Spring forward. I get excited about this every year. I've noticed in the last couple of weeks to hear more birds chirping in the morning and a little bit more daylight. And man, spring forward is right around the corner.
Well, I'm excited about the prospect of maybe never having to spring forward or fall back again.
I heard that. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing away with that. I don't know. I've not read up on what the ramifications of that would be. Maybe more daylight period. I don't know.
You don't have to remember to change your clock.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That's cool. I remember one time as a little fella, we forgot to roll our clocks forward. I think it was on Sunday, and then we ended up like being the only ones at church that morning, and we were just kind of wondering what happened, So took us a while to figure that one out. Anyway, thank you folks for tuning in to this show. Your Life, Your Way is the only, first and best funeral-focused live show on Facebook, and we do a little splash of pre-arrangement just because we're passionate about it. This is part of the Media Path program as created by our friends at Independent Funeral Planning Alliance and Jane Consulting, and we love it. We love to talk. We love to share. We love to show you the different pieces of funeral. Tina, we got a unique guest on this morning, I think.
Yeah, we've had him on before, and it's great, but he's got a new program he's going to introduce today. So we'll bring Dr. Jason Troyer into the show to join us.
All right. Dr. Jason Troyer of Mount Hope Grief Services. Fantastic, gentlemen. Good morning, Dr. Troyer. How are you today?
Good morning to both of you. Thanks for having me on again. Doing great.
Absolutely. Perfect. Love to have you on the show always. Having you depart your wisdom and share that with the folks that are viewing. Want to take a second to show respect to the joy in your home with your new addition. So congratulations on that. I know that there's abundant joy in your home and will be for a long, long time. Just goes to show what awesome people you and your wife are.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I give credit to my wife. We had talked about this for a long time. We recently welcomed a 19-month-old girl, little Maria from Bulgaria, into our home. Have a third daughter now. So I've got a 9, a 7, and a 1.5-year-old. And my wife, Jenny, was just key in keeping up with all the paperwork and all those sorts of things. And so we're just thrilled to have her back home finally with us.
I'm sure. Congratulations. So what's new in your professional world? Mount Hope Grief has grown by leaps and bounds over the last couple of years that I know of, and we've got a new program in partnership with our friends with Homesteaders Life called Finding Resilience. Is that correct?
That's right. That's the latest thing. I've been working with Homesteaders for a little while now, and they do offer my Finding Hope series of grief support booklets as well. And so if folks want to order those through their marketing system, they can do that. And the most recent thing is the Finding Resilience program. So Homesteaders approached me a couple of about a half year ago, 3/4 of a year ago, and said we really want to focus on how we can help funeral professionals. And they knew burnout was a problem. And I was already doing a burnout presentation at state conferences and other places. And they said, we want to really expand some resources that would help funeral professionals as they deal with some of the stress and challenges that come along with the nature of the work. And would I help them come up with some materials and a whole comprehensive program to help with that. And I was just really excited to work with them further. And I knew it was an issue. As I was giving presentations, I would always have folks asking questions in the presentations, and always having folks coming up afterwards. And sometimes I'd have a booth with my products, and they'd come up and they'd want to talk about some of the challenges that they personally had. They wanted to talk about, I had folks come up and tell me, I've been through rehab, I've got coworkers, this has been tough on my family. all sorts of different things that they'd want to talk about. And so I knew the need was there, and I really wanted to see what I could do. And with the resources of Homesteaders, we could really make something really powerful.
Awesome. Incredible sounding program. Let's kind of talk about, I've never really thought about it much before you sent out a survey last year about funeral career burnout. Do you see the potential for a greater percentage of burnout professionally in this industry versus other industries?
Yeah, I absolutely. One question I get quite a bit is, are there exact percentages of burnouts or studies on it? And I wish somebody would send me the study. I've looked for it, and we haven't had a real good kind of comprehensive survey of funeral professionals in burnout. But I always say the evidence is just there. It's just more anecdotal. I think everyone in funeral service has gone through, even if they're not burned out that they're ready to leave the field, they have experienced job stress, compassion fatigue, some of these things that are related to burnout. And so, with the it was interesting as I was putting together my initial presentation, and I was trying to get myself in the mindset of funeral professionals and just kind of collect some of the things that I had heard various funeral professionals tell me about the stresses of the job, and everything from terrible inconsistent hours to seeing certainly physical trauma. Certainly the embalmers and a lot of funeral providers would witness that physical trauma to someone. Working what I call vicarious trauma in terms of the emotional trauma of kind of working with families who are emotionally hurting day in and day out. Everything is on a rough time schedule. You're planning something that might be as intricate as a wedding, but you've got 1, 2, 3 days to plan it, and so there's always a lot of pressure in that situation. Funeral professionals talk about, you see families sometimes at their best. You see great examples of compassion and patience and grace, and you see families at their worst. You see families come together who haven't talked in 5, 10, 15 years, and now they've got to make some important decisions, and they didn't agree beforehand, and now with the stress of this situation and a loss, maybe there was a peacemaker, and that maybe the person who died was kind of the peacemaker in the family, and so now as a funeral professional, you're playing referee, and all of those are just a handful of the various stresses that funeral professionals have that just really aren't in a lot of so many other professions, and so I think they are at a unique risk for burnout, and like I said before, maybe you're not ready to walk out the door and leave your job tomorrow, but certainly the job stress that goes with it that I think is just much more significant. Sometimes I think about every once in a while I use that phrase, well, it's not a matter of life and death. Well, for funeral professionals, it almost always is a matter of life and death. So it's like, I'm sorry I have to miss your ball game, or I'm sorry that I have to work on Christmas Eve, or whatever it might be. There's a family that's waiting, and this is the first time they've had that loss, and they're hoping that someone's going to be there for them. And funeral professionals, day in and day out, are there for them, and that's why I'm so just continually impressed by them. But this was an opportunity to kind of say, okay, you take care of other people all the time. Let's take a moment and find some ways where you can take care of yourself. Because if you're not in top shape, you're not helping the families to the best of your ability. And so we really need that. They need you. They need you. Yeah.
I agree with that completely. I remember when my mom passed, I thought that I would handle it better being a funeral professional. And what I began to realize was I can't heal because I wasn't able to get away from death. I was still having to deal with other people's deaths on a daily basis. So I found it very helpful stepping out of that comfort zone and actually going to a therapist and talking through my own hurt. I cannot give better credit to the value of going to see a therapist or working through this new program. I'm excited about it. And on behalf of the industry, thank you for doing it. I don't know that this has been approached before in this way. So this is groundbreaking for us as professionals. Any thoughts there, Tina?
No, I just think that in any industry where you're the caregiver, that's where you see the biggest burnout. So you see it in nurses, you see it in any healthcare industry, in and palliative care, because most of us go to work, and some days we might have a really trying day that's just drained us because it was emotional, but these people have that every single day. And so I imagine the burnout is much higher for those kinds of professions than for, say, someone who works in social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that tough schedule, you have to grab a bite when you can, and so it's probably not as healthy. It might be something you can grab quick, or fast food, or those sorts of things. I know a lot of folks. I talk about the ability to be physically and psychologically away from work, and especially I think this is true in a lot of cases, but maybe particularly with smaller firms where the idea is like, this whole town is comprised of people I consider to be my families. And so if I'm gone, then I'm not taking care of my families. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, that commitment to your community is exactly why you're in the funeral service, and probably why you're well regarded within the community. But then you're also kind of, even if you do get away for a little bit, you're not kind of mentally away. And so Jason, like you had mentioned, just a chance to kind of break free from being around death and loss is just so critical. It's easier. Everything about burnout is probably, it's easier said than done. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't tackle it and look for ways to kind of adjust a couple of habits that might make them a little bit healthier. Try to be gentle with ourselves, gentle with yourself, I should say, since I'm not a funeral professional, but gentle with yourself in terms of, you can't be everything all the time to all folks, but so where can you make adjustments where you're taking care of yourself, but also maintaining that really high service, what you're known for?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Sometimes it's just a matter. Sometimes it's just a matter of a reminder. So if you get a reminder, maybe from the outside, that you need to take a moment, or learning to set boundaries. I know that's an issue even for me in my industry, because I work at home. I'll find myself just working all the time. There's nobody telling me I have to. And so I have to set boundaries for myself and remind myself that you need to step away from this.
That's a great point, and it's a nice segue for me to talk about one of the specific features of the program. Is that we've set up folks can sign up for a weekly email from me. Just pops in your email box. It is 1, maybe 2 paragraphs. It's not something that takes a long time to read. As we go along, we're going to have some of these be some video messages, but just a quick reminder to kind of take a step. I actually have it set up. I've kind of set it up through my Gmail and some various Google programs to send myself a daily reminder. And part of that is, some business goals, and part of that is a little gratitude. So it forces me to type at least 1 or 2 sentences about what I'm going to do that day to build my business. More importantly, I'm forced myself to kind of type 1 or 2 things that I'm really thankful for, and people I'm really thankful for in my life, and those sorts of things. Now that's a personal daily reminder, but I think as part of the program, anybody can sign up for those weekly reminders, and I've got a wide variety of topics. That's one thing I like about the program. Homesteaders was really great and said, this is your area, and so they gave me a lot of freedom. So I talk a little bit about a wide variety of different topics, and some of it is talking about physical health and trying to a little bit better exercise, a little bit better eating. Some of it is in the psychology of gratitude and positive psychology. Some of it is about setting good boundaries, dealing with coworkers, dealing with families, and just a wide range of different topics. So I think there's going to be something there that hits about everybody at one point or another. And before I forget, one thing that I think is just so critical. Yes, Homesteaders is the partnering organization on this, but they specifically said from the beginning, we want the program and all the materials to be available to every funeral professional out there, whether they use Homesteaders or not. And that was just another thing that just really drew me to working with Homesteaders and that program to just, we care about the profession. Anything that helps the profession helps all of us. And so these are the folks that are on the front line. And while I'm saying that, one other thing, when I talk about the front line, and you might notice I'm using the term funeral professionals instead of necessarily funeral directors. The other thing that I really wanted to do was talk to all the professionals that work with families. That's pre-need folks, that's front office folks, that's embalmers, that's directors, whatever your title is. If you're working with those families, there are various situations that come up. You might think about burnout. You might initially think about an embalmer, unfortunately dealing with a child or an accident victim or something like that. And that's without question, that's a high stress situation. But I've had funeral homes call me and talk to me about, they wanted me to talk with their front office staff. They said, you know what, people come in and they want to take care of some paperwork or pick up an urn or something like that. And they just start talking. And so, and we're happy to listen, but it's also, we have a couple of those in a row. We hear it too on the front side of things. It's not just the funeral directors, there's kind of no escape in the front desk. So I really wanted to kind of send that message out to, and with pre-need folks, you are listening to folks who are in hospice situations. You are listening to folks, families who are going through a significant transition, as sometimes in that what I call pre-at-need situation where it's going to happen within days, weeks, or months, and we all know what's on the writings on the wall, and so there's a lot of emotion that goes on there, and so this is just for everybody is the focus of the program.
The worst, to me, from a pre-needs perspective, the worst situation that I've heard of a couple years ago, and I can't remember who the pre-need agent was, but he had spoken of a family that he had tried to get to do a pre-need, and it was for the husband. And he never got to really get him to move forward with it. He passed away, and at the cemetery, the wife just chewed out the pre-need agent for not making her husband do the pre-need. And how that'd be hard to go home with.
Yeah. Yeah, what a difficult situation where you can do, I know pre-need folks probably get flack for at times someone felt like they might have nudged a little too hard, but you have those situations where you see the reality of it. It's like we know how this game ends. We all know where this ends up, and so you can't put it off, but you can only offer so many reminders. And what a difficult situation that would be.
Oftentimes, I'll hear also how another example of high stress in this industry. I heard this about 5 years ago that funeral professionals are still in the top 3 or 4 most trusted professions in a community. And there's a lot of stress that goes on with that, especially for the owners, because eyes are always on them when they're out in the community, to see how they act and see how they behave and see if they want to let, or I want to let my loved one be in that person's care. So sure. A lot of stress in that regard also. But I'm curious if you've done any research on addiction in the funeral industry. I would say the level of stress and depression kind of correlates there.
Absolutely. I don't have a large-scale clear study of just the funeral industry, but without question, that's a topic that comes up all the time at the presentations and when folks are contacting me afterwards. It's addictions are often about numbing, and when you've got when you're witnessing so much pain in various ways, then sometimes there's the urge to numb it in one way or another. And so substance abuse is certainly a problem. And as time away from family and feeling like you're perhaps almost not more invested in work than you'd want to be, but you feel a little bit tied to it, like you can escape, then there's only might be 1 or 2 ways to escape, and substances might feel like an escape in those situations. And so it's certainly a problem. And like you mentioned also, but also feeling like you're constantly on stage within your community, wherever you are, whether it's a service or whether you're just going out to dinner with your family, always feeling like you're out there and being evaluated, so to speak. That's a heavy burden. That's a heavy burden.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about how folks can access Finding Resilience. I just went, while we were talking, I just went and signed up for your newsletter. Your email program took 20 seconds and got an instant response. So I thought that was cool. The technology's working. How can folks learn more about it? Through the sign up process?
Yeah, fantastic. The main source is that at homesteaderslife.com/resilience, I believe. Thank you, Tina. And that is kind of our current kind of homepage, if you will. And the great thing about the program is that folks learn different ways, and there's a lot of different components to the program. That's the best place to start. You can request one or both of our written materials. We have what we call the guidebook, and that is more for the folks who want some information and facts and more kind of the nuts and bolts about burnout and resilience. And so that's available, and Homesteaders Life is happy to send that directly to you. Other folks enjoy journaling, and they like inspirational quotes, so we have what we call the inspirational journal, and folks can request that as well. And that's where you can sign up, like you mentioned, sign up for the weekly emails from me and get those out there. The other components of the program include workshops that and presentations that I'm providing at state, regional, professional associations, national associations. I'll be presenting on burnout at ICCFA out in Las Vegas here in April. I've got North Carolina and Georgia state conventions coming up and presenting there about burnout. Really excited to get the word out. So some folks, I love that because I get a chance to have an hour or two with folks and really get into the heart of the issue. But I know that there are folks out there who can't get to various presentations. They might not want to show up at a presentation or something like that, and if they feel like that's in some way admitting that burnout is a problem. So I love that Homesteaders has set it up so that the emails are very private. You can send them to whatever email address you want, and they'll send those booklets to whatever address you provide, and it's a great way to get some resources without necessarily telling everybody that you might be struggling a little bit. And I really want to emphasize there is this continuum of burnout. I suspect every funeral professional in one way or another experiences job stress, and I think these materials would help you even if you're just feeling that level of stress. And hopefully you'll take advantage of these materials and other resources before you get to the point where you feel like you have to step away from the profession. Of course, that's the goal, is for some early intervention so that we can help folks before they feel like they have to walk out the door because they just can't take it anymore. So yeah, a variety of different products and different avenues. And I love the presentations, but I wanted something that would keep going even after the presentation and keep that communication going. So it's a great way to do that. So that's a great place to start.
Good stuff. Tina, we got a comment?
Yeah, so Matt says it's always great having Dr. Troyer on the show, and we truly appreciate his expertise and all that he does for IFPA and our profession.
Amen to that, for sure.
So, Dr. Troyer, one of the things that I've been reading a lot about is how funeral professionals are being affected by the opioid crisis.
Yes, yeah, and I think it's just another unfortunately, I think it's another layer of stress on top of everything else, where they see folks in their community, people that they know, coming from a wide variety of different backgrounds. A lot of times people assumed that drug addiction was something that affected a certain sector of society, but it is cutting through all socioeconomic levels. Everyone in those communities, and quite frankly, in the United States, has a possibility of opioid addiction and other concerns, and just how quick and how significant it has hit many of these communities. I know especially here in the Appalachian Valley, upper Ohio Valley, and certainly New England. I know unfortunately other areas of the country are catching up quickly, but to see families who feel so helpless, to feel like often in many cases, working with families who felt like they did everything that they could, and just feel a lot of guilt and other pain on top of their grief. And I know it takes a toll on top of the funeral directors. And I've seen all sorts of reactions from funeral professionals. Certainly sadness and grieving along with community members, but also just anger at and frustration at, like, what do we do about this? It's in some ways, such a complicated problem, and no easy solutions from where I'm sitting. So just, unfortunately, that's just one more thing that's kind of piling on to the stress level for funeral professionals these days.
What do you think, Dr. Troyer, real quick, and we're approaching the 30-minute mark already. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly, but what do you think is the key to getting funeral professionals to be open to this kind of program? I think historically, especially in smaller communities, the thought of needing therapy or being open to therapy, whether it be in person or phone or video conference or through printed material, has been labeled as bad, if you will.
Sure.
But that's definitely not the case.
Absolutely not. No, I'm glad. I'm glad we had time for that question, that comment, because it is a critical thing. One thing I talk about quite a bit is we've got to start pushing aside this old school mentality of, sometimes I hear some folks say, well, you knew what you were getting into when you got into the funeral service business, so just kind of suck it up. And we've got to move past that. Yeah, we knew. Yeah, the analogy I would use, or the comparison, certainly police officers know what they're getting into when they enter that line of work, and yet when something terrible happens to police officers or someone else, we don't tell them to suck it up. And in fact, in many ways, first responders, police officers, firefighters, the military, all of these organizations have very strategically, very well developed kind of critical incidents stress reduction programs in place. So if there is unfortunately a shooting one way or another, all sorts of things, those organizations really jump in and take care of the individuals who are affected, their families. And so my comment to funeral professionals is, look, if the tough men and women in our law enforcement, if our first responders and our military see burnout as a problem and are taking it seriously, then funeral professionals need to take it seriously too. And then on the other, so that's kind of maybe more of the stick. The carrot is let's take care of yourself. Be kind to your future self. Be kind to, see how this is affecting your employees and seeing how it might be affecting your ability to serve families as best as possible, maybe perhaps more than you think. And we all want to take care of families as best we can, and also maintain your good relationships with your loved ones, and so that there are no regrets anywhere around that at all. So that's a good question. I hope folks will just see, a lot of times making one or two small changes can make a whole difference. You can change your trajectory of your physical health, your emotional health, and you can really make some big strides with just a few adjustments. It doesn't have to be radical changes, but you do have to start somewhere.
Love it. Tina, any questions, thoughts there?
No, I think I love the analogy that you use, because in other professions, not only is it available, but a lot of times it's required.
Yes.
So if there is, an officer involved shooting, usually they have to go and speak to a counselor and work through that and make sure that they're okay to return to work, or if they haven't been taken off the work, make sure they're still okay to be there. It's interesting, though, that this profession kind of preaches pre-need, which is, take care of yourself and, get help when you need it, but then they don't kind of take their own advice.
That's a good point. I think that's that idea of kind of serving others so much that you kind of wear yourself down. Occasionally you have to put yourself first. Absolutely.
Good comments. Go ahead, Tina.
I was just saying, if you look at it from the point of, taking care of yourself is how you best serve your families, and maybe it makes it a little easier for them to take that time and do so.
Yes, and I mentioned just briefly. I mentioned, if folks are in family run firms, and you want the next generation or maybe a key employee to take over, set an example where it's like, this is a reasonable lifestyle. Set it up so that it looks, I know a lot of children or key employees are saying, I don't know if I want to step into the next role or be the next generation if my life is going to look like your life. And so maybe it's a situation where you want to make it look attractive to someone you want to pass that business to. So that may be another factor.
That's an awesome key point right there. I've never thought about that. I think that could change the demand for new employees, younger folks that want to get into the profession. Even if they see an older, sad, depressed funeral director, they're not going to want to come into this profession.
Oh no, absolutely.
I love that. I love that analogy.
Well, and I think this program makes it easy because it's available to everyone, not just people who are part of Homesteaders. It's an easy way for firms to be able to implement kind of this taking care of this situation. without having to develop a program of their own. Because, it takes time and money and expertise to kind of develop that program. And this makes it really easy for them to give their employees something. Absolutely.
So I definitely hope that folks will sign up. If I know various folks, many viewers are on different committees or state associations. If this sounds like something that you'd want me to bring me in to do a presentation, or maybe even a longer, more interactive type workshop, we've got those available. And so, and you're always free to my contact information is at mountainhopegrief.com, and you're welcome to email or call me directly to ask me more about the program or anything that I offer. And so I hope this is a way where you kind of read about it, and maybe it's some small adjustments. Maybe for some folks it is, maybe they're at the point where maybe it's gone on a little longer than they need to, and you do need some more significant changes, and maybe a little bit of help to do that. We point you in the right direction with the program to look for those resources as well. But I think for a lot of folks, making a few key adjustments is going to be really will go a long way to making life a lot better and really building that resiliency. Absolutely.
Good point. Good show. Folks in the funeral profession, take heed to this. Take care of yourself. Take advantage of this wonderful program, Finding Resilience, presented by Dr. Troyer and Mount Hope Grief in partnership with Homesteaders Life. Dr. Troyer, thank you so much for being on our show this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. Love to be with you every time.
Thank you.
And I just want to let folks know that if you're watching the show, there is a clickable link to the program in the comments, so you can just hop down there and click on the link and go check out the resilience program.
Nice, very easy. Folks, enjoy your day. Thanks for tuning in to Your Life Your Way. Happy